I think there's a discipline that good salespeople, or in my experience, those that are successful, don't just do the activity to do the activity. There's a reason behind the process and the preparation. Really, my philosophy around selling is empowering and enabling, whether it's with my team, internally in an organization, but really it's an art of persuasion and storytelling. And so for me, I try to continually focus in my professional career around what am I solving for and what is the why of my customer. And I really internalize that. And I think in my 20 plus years of sales experience and leadership, when I've ever faced challenges, if I get back to the basics around the why and being curious and problem solving, I have found that has helped me be very successful and help my clients be successful. And it really fulfills that empowerment and enablement mindset that I have.
Okay, fantastic. The power of being curious.
Yes.
So you mentioned a few things here, the why, questioning, being curious. Wanted just to lay the ground with exactly what we mean here, Sarah, and what we like to see in our reps or in ourselves as to when this is happening.
Yeah, so I think it's very easy to get caught up in, you're at a cocktail party or in the elevator, people are like, what do you do? And you talk about the tactical elements, right? I personally never thought I'd be getting a W-2 as a salesperson, so to speak, as a professional role. And I studied psychology and nutrition, actually. So maybe that helped drive me towards a profession that has some natural and organic elements of curiosity. But when I think about the why, it's getting away from the what do we do and how we do it, but getting to the core of drawing in the human aspect of emotion and starting with, well, what is the why? Why are we doing what we're doing? Why is my company differentiated? Why do we sell the widgets that we do or the services that we sell? And then you kind of go out into, well, how we accomplish what we do. And then you get to that final layer of what we do. It's like the Apple computers. They don't just say, oh, we sell computers and iPhones or devices, right? Then everybody's like, well, who cares? A lot of people do that. But it's that why of their mission and vision as a company that grew them to the brand that they are, but they didn't start with the what we do or the how we do it. It was the why that drew people in. So that's kind of the tenet that I try to focus on, regardless of the sales industry that you're in.
Okay, fantastic. So it's a piece there almost on educating our prospect to our why, as well as knowing our why ourselves.
Exactly. And really listening and understanding their why. In a sales role, I really think of it as those of us, feet on the street or leading a team. It really is about a performance in a way, in that combining and being that face of the operational aspects and the elements of what you're representing, but really you are the face of that in sales. So not only being able to articulate and be authentic in what you're representing and why, but listening to your clients and customers. Rarely is there someone with a title in an organization that's I buy things, to your point. Our role is to guide and to lead and to educate and really get back to kind of impacting three elements I like to kind of progress my clients and my team through if I'm working with the team, but starting with the know, like what do you need to know, and move them through the progression of now, how is that going to impact you and feel and really engage them and understand them and what's the problem we're really solving for? And then we can move them to that really engaged, loyal, ultimate goal of having a customer that we grow, sustain, cross-sell, upsell, all that good stuff. And they're living it. They're truly a partner and a client at that point, but you've got to start at the beginning. And I think to earn that right to move through, you can't forget that middle piece, which is the emotional connection and the why. So it's definitely a process of education and connection.
It's superb. I'm glad you bring up that final point. I want to go into the process with how we do this in our sellers in a second, but you mentioned something that brings us into interesting ground, which is our prospects why and our why. And sometimes these things aren't aligned yet, particularly if we work in or for a type of solution, platform, whatever, where things are changing. There's a new way of doing things. So talk to me about how you align your why and a prospect's why, especially when what they came into the conversation with may actually not be the final place they leave the conversation with, if that makes sense, in terms of what they thought they needed to happen.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of discipline behind the scenes. I kind of compare my role as a sales professional as a competitive athlete. I was a competitive athlete before I, got into the world of earning a living. And there's a certain discipline I think that is important underneath the surface, even though the actual conversation with the client, there's so much behind the scenes leading up to that point where you've earned the conversation. And I think there's a discipline that good salespeople, or in my experience, those that are successful, don't just do the activity to do the activity. There's a reason behind the process and the preparation, and there's a discipline of understanding, to your point, the competitive landscape. Who are the disruptors? What's coming in? What are the industry trends? If I am calling on a certain client, or again, getting back to the why of my company, what inspired my company's leadership to create? Where was the gap and the need in the business world that needed to be solved for? And where do I fit in? And how can I get an understanding of where my client is? And then it might sound very basic, but talking to the client, regardless if they're using a competitor or not using anybody at all, and you're introducing a new concept, is getting to ask them questions and be curious around either what has changed in their world and what is really the gaps in their process, because we all hear it. Oh, I'm fine, I have that, or I already use a competitor, or I don't need your help. But it's turning that conversation to get them thinking so that then we can then guide and educate them as salespeople. And quite honestly, being wise enough and disciplined to know when the timing or the element that you are bringing forth is not right. There's a lot of respect in the business world today to just recognize that. And being smart enough and disciplined enough to then utilize that in your pipeline and your success as an individual sales contributor, rather than just trying to throw everything against a wall and see what sticks. So I think that was a very long answer to a short question, but I think it comes back to discipline and understanding and really educating yourself on the company so that you can have relevant conversations with them and be very inquisitive and curious and just authentically honest and say, look, I want to understand. These are some things that I've seen and that I know, but I really want to understand for you, what is the challenge that you're facing? And how can we move the conversation to where I can help you solve for it? Because that's my why. My why is to help you solve problems, and that's how I win. I'm an advocate for solving your problems. So if the timing's not right, I'll respect that. But often I found if you approach that way, you get a lot further, and even no's give you intelligence and insights that you can bring back to be better in your role.
Yeah, superb. So it's very much being that consultant before we be that salesperson and figuring out what the problem is and then how we can solve for that problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because selling really, I mean, if you get very tactical, right, when you look at company financials or a P&L, sales is revenue. It's the business that you're bringing into the company. It's almost, if you shift your mindset as a sales professional, as that is the outcome, you know, like we'll hear happiness is not a goal, it's an outcome. But there's elements and things you can do and control to create that outcome. But when you do those elements of knowing and understanding and connecting on an emotional level and really being curious and focusing on the why rather than the what and just the sheer actions, the outcome is selling and winning and persuading. And then that relates to, you know, of course, the company needs to get paid. But I found that if I shift my mindset more to my role is to earn that and bring it in, it changed my trajectory in my career when I made that shift.
Okay. It sounds like that could help sales folks with two things that can be uncomfortable, challenging. It's the weight of a target. And it's sometimes saying things that we reflect on in the evening and think, why did I say that? That's not me. Really interesting, Sarah, if you felt like you could share it and you don't have to, but you mentioned that when you adopted this new mindset, that's when your trajectory took off. Really interested to hear more about that moment, and why that happened and what helped you click this realization.
Yeah. So like I said before, didn't necessarily think, you know, when I was in college and university, that isn't what I studied, right? I didn't study, there wasn't a sales major at the time. So when I shifted into the career path, it kind of was serendipitous in the sense that I knew I was competitive. I knew I did enjoy learning and problem solving around other people, and I like to win. Like I said, I was an athlete. I had a discipline in my life around performance. Nobody sees the early morning training sessions, the blood, sweat, tears, sore muscles, the falls. They only see that performance at the end. And that's kind of, as a salesperson, you're earning that point. And I felt a little out of my league at first. I knew my internal intrinsic motivation was I'm going to find a way. And I realized for me, I fell back on the sports discipline of I need the right coaches. I need to trust my teammates. I need to look at who's the best at what they do. So I started just asking and watching and having lunches with the guy. I mean, I was the rookie and the guy that was number one in the team every year. And I just picked his brain, you know, this annoying young, you know, I just want to know what you're doing and how you're doing it and what makes you successful. But then combining it with my own personality, I realized when it clicked, the moment was when I stopped taking a word track or, you know, the trainings for what they were, and I internalized them and I owned it. Like, this is my territory. This is my goal. These are my clients. And I shifted this mindset of I was a CEO of Me Inc. And I was fortunate enough, and I looked at what my company and team and trainings and sales leadership gave me as collateral and investment and free marketing, if you will. They were investing that in me. And now it was my job to go out and make it You Inc. That's when it clicked. And the conversations became more authentic. I felt a lot more comfortable, who to call, why I was calling them. I built more confidence in what I was representing in the company. And it was just a real shift, but it took the recognition, I think, of understanding that it is an emotional storytelling role. You're a performer in sales. And you need to be able to balance the technical elements and the understanding with the execution. And I stopped thinking I had to be perfect or hitting some kind of goal or quota to I'm going to relentlessly pursue excellence and back into whatever they give me, all these disciplinary elements, and own it and be accountable. And it just shifted my whole mindset, regardless of the industry, vertical. And I have been in a B2B environment, mainly working with C-level companies, more financial related type sales roles. And I've done small business startup all the way to global enterprise sized organizations that I've navigated. And each time might be a little bigger, right? But the core blocking and tackling, sorry for the sports analogy, remain the same. It was, I need to understand, where do I fit in, keep that discipline and own the accountability and hone my skills so that they know they're talking to me, but that I'm representing something bigger than myself in my role.
It's a fantastic story. When we take ownership over our book of business, and when we attach that to a personal why again, and make our decisions driven by that, that's when we really start winning and going up a level and taking things on board for ourselves. It sounds like, Sarah, in your case.
Yeah. And as you can see, I don't really try to hide my my background and my why. And you need to be professional, but I think something I've also seen is, and why I am so passionate about the kind of know and feel and do and engagement and personal ownership and accountability is, I think in the world of business, especially in a sales environment, the lines aren't as delineated as they used to be around professional mindset and personal mindset. I think the world of business has embraced and understand the importance of managing and connecting to a whole individual and their employees. And customers see that and recognize that. And they want to be a part of and partner with companies and individuals and organizations that uphold certain standards and elements. And I don't think you have to pretend to be one way at work and one way individually. Nobody's perfect, but it's okay to help people understand that your why and the lessons you've learned have been around being an athlete or being a parent or being a sibling or prior experiences. As long as you leverage and utilize those towards helping your accountability and understanding your role, I think it really makes it easier to give your chances self a chance to be successful, because it's challenging to hit goals and quotas and things like that. It's not easy, or everybody would do it.
No, it's not. Just wanted to briefly mention that's a fascinating idea we have going on here, that really companies also looking to align culturally with their vendor. And as a salesperson, you're the face of that culture, which is also intersecting with our personal life. I've not heard that before, Sarah, on the blog, and I think that's a great little snippet. Just want to ask you about a real quick final piece then. You mentioned about your internal values as an athlete and how that helped drive your execution as a sales rep. Is curiosity and a reason for why something that is internal, or can it be trained? And on the back of that, what's a good cadence, process, way of getting this stuff ingrained in our reps as a leader?
Yeah, great question. Because if I shift my hat to being either a peer, mentor, or sales leader, I think one thing I've looked for or I've noticed is a hallmark of those that are successful. And I think when I say successful, they're able to endure, persevere, come out the other end because they've owned it, right? They've found that accountability to own it. So I do think there is an element of intrinsic motivation that is foundational to successful salespeople because of the environment you're in. You know, certain athletes are, if you're not comfortable putting in the work and being out there in a performance element, knowing that there's going to be some kind of judgment, whether it's who crosses the finish line first or literally a set of subjective judges, and you have to hit elements, and you don't have a certain intrinsic ability to absorb that and endure that and get up every time you fall, it's probably going to be very challenging for you to be successful. You might not be in the right career. So that's one element I do think is foundational. I think there is a commonality of intrinsic motivation in a successful salesperson. But as a leader, I do believe that your role is understanding, and again, just like we would with our clients, is understanding that individual salesperson's why. Because the worst thing you can do is have a top performer on your team and extinguish that intrinsic motivating fire in them. So you will give them the foundation with all the trainings and the know, right? Loving working for you and your company, like that jersey, right? The name on the front and the name on the back. Can you pull that out of them? I strongly believe that's the differentiator of strong organizations and companies that retain top talent, is they have a great combination of someone with intrinsic motivation, and then they fuel that fire and they take it to the next level with extrinsic motivational leadership. And they inspire them, they support them, they encourage them, and let them be the racehorse that they are, and not be afraid to help guide them when they fall, because they'll have that intrinsic motivation to get back in the game. So, and I don't know how we're doing on time, but in the process element, I think it goes back to a progression of engagement, which I did not coin. That's actually, there's been some studies around at the university level of, if you really, I'll geek out here for a minute, but as a salesperson, anybody listening to this and you want to dive into behavioral economic theory, it's fascinating. It's a game changer in some ways of understanding yourself, your peers, your teams, and your clients. Basically, it's the science of why people do what they do. But in the process, if you either as a leader or individual start with the what do I need to know, how do I internalize this? That's where that why comes in. Why is that important? What's in it for me? What is there to make a difference of what I just learned? And then continue to find and surround yourself with those that get you to a sense of advocacy, ownership, and loyalty of living it and doing it. I think that is the process I would recommend anybody go through, whether you're new at a role in sales or you're leading, is don't forget those tenets so that you can move through. And I found you'll really get inspired, engaged, and committed individuals that will give you 100% and hit their goals.